The men who survived their ship sinking have been held in Somalia since the 12th of November 2010. The UN, who secured their release, say they are now safely in Kenya and will soon be repatriated to their home countries. eNCA East Africa Bureau Chief Robyn Kriel has been given exclusive access to the freed hostages. She joins me on the line now from Nairobi. Now, Robyn, take us through the day's events today.
Well, the day began early here in Nairobi. We joined the UN Hostage Support Program, which is part of the UN Office of Drugs and Crime, on a plane, a World Food Program plane up to Mogadishu, and then to South Galkayo. Galkayo is one of the areas where an enormous amount of pirate activity occurs. It was there that when we landed there, that we were met by members of the Galmudug administration and their security forces. The Galmudug administration was instrumental in helping secure the release of these hostages from their pirates. What we understand is that the 11 pirates escaped from, with the help of some well-wishers, from the pirate sort of clan bay that they were being held in through a window. They then ran through bush and were met by the Galmudug security forces, who then looked after them, kept them secure in a hotel until we arrived. We also arrived to pick up three Kenyans who have also been kidnapped, ironically, the same plane, about 23 months ago, a woman and 2 men. So it was in fact 14 hostages in total that we managed to extract from Galkayo. You can imagine the looks of joy on their faces when they finally realized that there was a plane after 4 years or 23 months of waiting. That there finally was a plane. There were UN people welcoming them. They really couldn't stop smiling when they got on the plane. They couldn't stop reading the newspapers that we'd bought for them. They couldn't stop looking at the food, at the nuts, at the water bottles that were given to them on the plane. It was really quite an incredible experience to witness. And some of their stories, their horrific stories of the torture and physical and emotional abuse that they've been through for the past few years.
Now, Robyn, let's stay with that a little bit. Now, in one of your tweets, you mentioned that you were humbled at how kind and warm hostages are despite the trauma they've been through. Janet Mutoni gave you a big hug, and she said that she missed that affection from a woman. Tell us a little bit more about what these people went through.
Well, the two groups were held by different pirates and kept very separately, it seems, and their experiences were quite different, and we're not exactly sure why. The 3 Kenyans held for 23 months, and we understand that there was some kind of a ransom paid there to secure their release. They're members of an aid group called International Aid Services. They were not abused. While their experience was incredibly traumatic, they were moved a lot, but they weren't physically abused. They were just mostly mentally abused and told to talk on the phone to their families and tell them all sorts of bad things. Yes, the woman was, we understand, physically left alone, which was very, very good in terms of there have been other stories of female hostages who have been abused as well. The male hostages, however, experienced something very different, the male members of the Albedo crew. But when I saw Janet, I said to her, please, can I just give you a hug? She was all dressed up in traditional Somali, I guess, Somali dress. And I said, please, can I just give you a hug? Welcome back. It's so good to see you. You're a Kenyan. And she hugged me and wouldn't let go and said that she has not had any contact with females. She's hardly even seen a female since she'd been kidnapped. You saw, or you will see rather, the video that we're going to send through when she was greeted by her family members as well. You can imagine a very excited mother meeting her at the airport, sisters and friends as well. So it was very, very special for her and special for me as well. Very, very kind and humble people. The Albedo crew, very kind and humble as well. They wanted to give us their chairs to sit on because they thought that I was a woman and I shouldn't be standing. You can imagine that these people have been through absolute hell, emotional abuse, torture on the phone, torture without seeing their families, 4 years of being held by pirates and abused in some of the most horrendous ways, and yet they're still checking if we are okay and we are comfortable. So a very, very warming and heartwarming day it was.
A heartwarming day indeed, but we can't take away from the fact that there are still 38 hostages that are still missing. Any efforts to bring them back, and what exactly is going on there?
Efforts are ongoing and negotiations very similar to the ones conducted through the UN hostage support group going on as well. It's not just the hostages themselves that go through the trauma. I'm sure you can imagine the loved ones sitting at home in Iran, in Bangladesh, in India, in Sri Lanka. They have lost the breadwinners of their family. A lot of them were not being paid. They're not being paid while they're in captivity. The ship owner, in fact, of the Albedo sort of disappeared off the face of the planet once the ship sank, and was not paying anyone salaries. So those families have also been hugely traumatized. They've lost their breadwinner. Many have lost their homes. So this UN hostage support team is also trying to offer support to them. It's going to also be a few very hard days of getting reintegrated back into normal society for these hostages after all the psychological trauma that they've gone through. Indeed, the 38 hostages, that's the sort of thing that will keep people up at night, especially after hearing just how badly these crew members were treated, beaten, whipped, dragged out by their feet. The Iranian man was explaining to us how, because they believed he was from a wealthy family and that they might be able to extort more by torturing him, he was hung by his feet for hours until he passed out. So they weren't allowed to see doctors until very recently. I mean, one of them was shot. One of their crew members was shot while they were still on the ship, the Albedo, and his body kept in a refrigerator. He was shot dead. So it's just enormous amounts of trauma, and this is still going on. This fight against piracy is not over, but it looks like they are making some progress. And indeed, there used to be 700 hostages. Now there are only 38. Hopefully, there'll be less very soon.
Robyn, that's where we leave it for tonight. Thank you so much for that update. That was our East Africa Bureau Chief, Robyn Kriel.
Know more. eNCA.com